Welcome to the Mobile Hunters Dojo. Take a seat on the mat and get ready to learn from today's best mobile hunting masters. I'm your host, the White Belt Sensei, Matt Lear. Be sure to follow us on Instagram at the Mobile Hunters Dojo. All right, everybody, welcome back to the dojo. Kick off your shoes and take a seat on the mat. I've got someone that I'm so pumped to have on because you were like the second podcast I think that I've ever been on, second or third, and it went so well. So for me to be able to return the favor, we have Bret Postal on here with us, Angell Road Outdoors, and awesome podcast. If you ever get a chance to go over there and listen to it, you probably already have, but if you haven't, get over there and do that. Bret is an amazing host and honestly, one of the best hosts I ever had. I wish I could be as good as you. You did a bunch of research and had great questions for me. So I asked Bret to come on for a couple of things. One, he killed an absolutely amazing buck this year, and I wanted to be able to hear about that and kind of dive into that and just hear the journey on how you got to that point. But we also share some other common interests too. And recently, in fact, today, I kind of put out a post about bringing like a fitness side to the dojo. And you already have you have Beefcake's Gym. Is that correct?
I do. I am the proud owner, along with my brother, of Beefcake's Gym, which started as a podcast joke based upon my brother and our physique, which is, former athlete, current father, still sort of active, likes to eat as well. But also, we got to stay active. And so I built out the barn. I have a 140-year-old barn at my house, and I built it out during COVID and said, ye who wish to work out, come on over.
So it looks awesome. But before we get into that, we should let people know, just in case they don't know you. You want to do a little introduction, like, yeah, where you're from, kind of how long you've been hunting, all that good stuff that we all do when we get on podcast.
Of course. I appreciate those kind words, number one. Number two, you, sir, are an incredible host, and I am honored to be here. I am Bret Postal. I am a Michigan native, father, husband, brother. I started Angell Road Outdoors along with a couple of buddies. We were hunting here in Michigan, and the gentleman who afforded us this incredible opportunity to hunt passed away. And in his honor, I started Angell Road Outdoors. It is strictly to pay homage to Ed. And Angell has two L's in it, and it is related to his last name. And so that name may not make sense to a lot of people, and I realize it can be confusing, but that's what it's all about. It's to pay homage to Ed. We still hunt there. We love the place. I am a construction manager for a large national quick serve restaurant company here based at, I live in Michigan. I travel for work into some of the biggest buck states in the Midwest. And I decided a few years ago that I would parlay that into some hunting opportunities. I have not been hunting my whole life. I started at about 20. I was a hockey player growing up, and that's pretty much all I did. It's all there was time to do. I started archery hunting at around the age of 20, 21, because everybody that I worked with was doing that. And I kind of wanted to fit in. And then I lived in Florida for 13 years, and hunting never crossed my mind until I returned back to Michigan with my family in 2017, which is where I came to Angell Road. And but I have, since about 2021, after I got hurt, I have been absolutely ate up. I know everybody says it, but I've been ate up with it. And I've been trying to figure out how I can have the absolute most adventures hunting whitetail deer for the rest of my life.
So, can you give us a little bit of background of like, so what's hunting been like since you got back in 17? Meaning, so you said you've been hunting this property where, is that like where you got reintroduced into hunting in Michigan? Was this?
Yeah.
Okay. And this this is a private piece of land?
It is a permission private piece. So initially when I started hunting, we would go to we would go up north to the St. Helen exit, and we would hunt that national forest up there. And I would never see deer
Yeah.
ever. Didn't see deer. And now that I'm an adult and I'm a mobile hunter. Now that I'm a mobile hunter, I realized I was a mobile hunter back then with a climber. I didn't know it. That's
Yeah.
just what I did. So anyway, a couple years doing that. It was really more to go up and drink and party up there. When I came back in 2017, two of my closest friends had fell backwards into this incredible property in Hillsdale County, Michigan, which is one of the top big buck counties in Michigan. And they just kind of, my one friend was doing his residencies as he was learning to become a cardiac rehab specialist, and they had lost permission on another piece and was complaining about it at work. And the nurse who was training him, I'm pretty sure training him, said, "My dad's got 80 acres down in Hillsdale. I'm sure he'd let you hunt." And we've been hunting it ever since. So anyway, it's 80 acres in ag country down in Hillsdale, and it historically was like 30 acres of CRP, and then 50 acres or 50 acres of heavy timber, big
Yeah.
timber. And yeah, it's private and it's permanent sets up there. I mean, I've been mobile hunting it for the last couple of years, but that's where I was reintroduced. And like I said, those first couple of years, you would spend an entire weekend up north and not see a single deer, and then you go drive to the same distance, southeast or southwest of my house, and you see bucks and chasing bucks and running bucks and does and 30 does a sit. It was remarkable.
Yeah. Yeah. So when you went up north, you said you were mobile hunting. I was thinking about this for myself too. I realized that about me. I started off with a climber. And somebody asked me, I said, so I've been mobile hunting my whole life. And then I realized, you know what? I don't know if I was. I was going to the same tree over and over again in the beginning. So so were you bouncing around to different spots when you went up to the national forest, or did you go to the same tree every time with the
No,
climber?
I didn't, and that's interesting that you say that, because when I reflect on those days, we were we were scouting, but we didn't know what we were looking for.
Yep.
We were scouting for areas that said where we would say it looks like a deer should be here,
Yeah.
but for no other reason. I mean, I don't think I really truly knew the difference between a rub and a scrape,
Mhm.
uh, or why they would be where they were. It was, this area looks like there should be deer, or there's a track in the sand over there. So no, we scouted, but we didn't know what we were doing.
Yeah. Yeah. I was lucky enough the guy that I was with actually was a phenomenal hunter, still is. And he was mobile. Like he would go to different spots. I just was comfortable going to the same tree that I knew I could
Yeah,
get my climber in. At least for the first couple years. And then I did end up going mobile, but he knew what he was doing. And I think we held him back because, he's like, hey, let's go across the river. And I'm like, I'm not going across the river at 5 o'clock in the morning. You're nuts, dude.
yeah,
And,
yeah,
but yeah, that's interesting. So similar, I started off in the national forest too, never saw a deer. I remember one time, like, I don't know, like a 4 point come flying in, and I just thought that was the coolest thing in the world and just watched it, never even shot it. So,
yeah.
and
And
not because I had standards. I was just
right.
like in awe of a deer.
And honestly, I think I was hunting just to hunt.
Yep.
I don't think I valued hunting for what it is. I did not value hunting then the way I value my time in the woods today.
Mhm.
Not even close. It's completely spiritual for me now,
Yep.
which is interesting to say because I'm not a spiritual person. I'm not a religious person, but it is a spiritual experience for me today. Whereas back then it was just something we did in
Yep.
between drinking.
So I've noticed too, like the more and more I watch some of your like clips and stuff that you put out, if it's a story or something like that, I see more and more big bucks like pop up in the background. Like right now, there's a new one that I don't recognize sitting behind you. There's one in beefcakes too. I saw. I think there was like a really nice buck in there. I know you've
Yeah.
gotten this. So you've been doing pretty good.
I have there's only been 1 year. So that's McMurray. And I don't know if you're familiar with the television show. Oh my God, it's Letterkenny.
No.
It's a Canadian show about the small town in Canada, and there's one really silly, goofy resident whose name is McMurray, and he's just always saying the weirdest stuff. And this particular buck was always right in my camera, and he would have stuff hanging off his antlers all the time. He was just a goofball. Anyway, so I have shot a 115-inch deer pretty much every year since I've been home, except for the year that I injured my eye.
That's
So
phenomenal.
yeah,
Like
and
For Michigan,
yeah.
right?
Oh yeah, and it's all one of them or two here, two in front of me were from Clarkston, and then three were down in Hillsdale. Yeah,
Yeah, that's great. That's
yeah.
really amazing. So, when you're hunting here in Michigan, are you you say it's like it's a spiritual thing, and I get that. I mean, same thing for me on a lot of different levels. Was that also a community thing? I mean, you're doing it with a group of guys
Yeah,
on this new piece,
yeah.
and okay. So, when did you start venturing out of state?
So I don't know if you know my eye injury. Do you know my eye injury story? I mean, we're not going to have to get into it, but
No, we have nothing but time here, so go ahead, feel
so
free.
the Saturday before Easter 2021, we were in the process of replacing boards on my deck. And I was waiting for my brother to come over. And so I was just getting stuff set up outside. And I cut a piece of wood and it didn't cut all the way through. I had adjusted the depth of the skill saw, didn't cut all the way through. I leaned over to break it off with my multi-tool. It was like a 1-inch cube piece of wood. And when I snapped it off, it projectiled directly into my right eye. Like it I know it didn't sound like this, but it did in my own brain. Like I was shot in the face with a shotgun. And
Yeah.
it felt like my eyeball exploded. It was the most horrific thing I've ever experienced in my life. And I collapse on the ground and I'm calling for help. There's nobody there. My wife is in the house, like preparing Easter dinner, like she can't hear me over the la 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 blender noises and everything. I'm sure she was having a great time. I'm outside screaming for help. Long story short is I scratched my cornea and then my retina started to detach. And it detached 6 times. Like
Oh,
they would open my eye, laser it in place, and I would heal, and then it would come apart again. Like I had like 6 eye surgeries. It's been ridiculous. So while it's healing, I have to lay face down on a massage table. And in a massage table, they have the little cushion with your face can go in. I
yep.
put a chair underneath it and would just watch hunting videos. And to stay mentally positive, I was thinking about healing and thinking about adventures and thinking about how it's going to be fine and I'm going to be able to hunt this fall and everything's going to be okay. Um, Before my injury, I had actually received for my birthday that year a saddle.
Mhm.
And so I learned how to saddle hunt that summer while I was healing. And I told myself, I'm gonna be fine and I'm gonna do all this stuff. Life is fragile. You never know when it's gonna be your last hunt. And so while I'm healing, I'm planning all of these adventures. Long story short is it healed, but it's never gonna be the same. I
Mhm.
ended up having to learn how to hunt left-handed.
Oh my.
And then in 2022, that's when I was really like, well, this is as good as it's ever going to be. So I'm just going to do everything now. I went to Kansas and in 22, I went to Illinois because I was working. And that's kind of how it all started was I hurt myself.
Wow. So a lot of people that would happen to them and it would just set them back and they would kind of accept things.
Yeah.
I don't know if you talk about like mental positive like thinking and all that kind of stuff, but I always get that feeling from you, like especially in the beefcake stuff, like
Yeah.
when you talk about working out, it's cold and you're out there and
Yeah.
so like is that a big part of has that always been a big part of you? Like being able to say, hey, you know what, I'm always going to find the positive side of things or I'm going to, take advantage of whatever situation I have and better myself, or is that something you learned later on?
I have
Like,
to work at it, man.
yeah.
It's a battle because so growing up playing hot, you and I grew up in a different era.
Mm-hmm.
Just call it what it is. People were tougher on kids back then,
The
especially in
best
sports.
era.
I think so. I agree with you.
Yeah.
Um, I was raised to be a little tougher. I think growing up playing very highly competitive hockey, we were We were trained to be tougher. Um, but my default is negativity. And so I have to I work very hard to overcome that. And you're right. Injuring myself immediately, I panicked. Like, I'm not going to be able to do anything that I love. And so I spent a lot of face down time talking myself up. And so, I read a lot of books. I watched a lot of videos of a lot of YouTube people being successful. And honestly, that's probably where I came across your content. Um, I've done 75 hard a couple times. I read a lot of, personal development books, but it is because my default is negative.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, mine is too. It really is. Can we talk about this for a second? Because I
Of
think
course.
there's something here. So we came into the game late. I'll speak for myself. It doesn't come natural to me. Hunting does not come natural to me. Like, I'm not a natural born killer. It's not something that I can just like easily go and pick up on. There's a lot of conversation around efficiency when scouting.
Mm-hmm.
Somebody just asked me that the other day, and I'm like, I'm not efficient. Like, I'd spend
Can't
a
be
lot of
either.
time. Yeah, but the negative part, we can view that as a negative, but the negative part causes like continuous improvement thoughts in my
Oh, yeah.
mind, and that I'm never satisfied with where I'm at. Now there's a danger there because that has brought me to dark places, and
Right.
I've learned to hold it back. Like you said, we got to work at it. But I think there's a little bit of hope if you have that. If you actually come from the era that we come from, and you're not reaching your goals really anywhere, but let's just talk about hunting, like tap into that negativity a little bit and spin it to a positive and use it to drive yourself. But for me, I think that negative like baseline that I always have running through me is actually what's helped me become successful. I don't know. I mean, I think I hear you saying that a little bit too. Like,
100%.
yeah,
I think I did one of my little shorts on my podcast I'd say that you have to grow up, sack up, and self-reflect a little bit. Be able to look inward and go, man, I'm a piece of shit. Or, man, I'm negative today.
yeah,
But you can't be so naive to think that you're perfect.
yeah,
But you have to grow up and mature enough to realize that we are all flawed. We all have things, and then figure out how to eat, like you said, use those things to your advantage, because not everything negative has to be a negative.
yeah, yeah, yeah. So true. Oh man, I appreciate talking with you. You know, I really love the guys that I've met on Instagram.
Yeah.
But a lot of the guys that I've met, I mean, I'm really close with. I really I look up to them sometimes too. But
Yeah.
they're younger than me, 10,
Hmm.
15 years younger than me. Um, and so it's rare to find someone who actually comes from my era and kind of can understand the speak. So I'm gonna geek out in that for a little bit with this
Good.
conversation. But so so you start going into other states. So Kansas City, did you jump into public, or are you jumping into like knock on door, lease, or mixture of
You know,
both?
I didn't. I knew that I wasn't going to be able to talk anybody into going with me just right off the bat, because
Yep.
I just knew it. And so, number one, it's expensive. Number two, it's so outside of anybody I know's comfort zone that I was just like, if I want to do this, I'm going to do it myself. And so I booked the whole trip. I applied and was awarded my first year and my
Nice.
second year. So I planned the whole trip. I was able to go in and look at the previous year's concentration of the Weehaw land. So
Mhm.
I based where I was going to go off of the previous year's data. So I looked at the map from the year before and said, well, there's a lot of Weehaw in this area. I'll apply in this area. There's a high number of tags. We stayed sort of centrally located. It worked out in my favor. Found a ton of Weehaw, found a ton of sign. I was just too early. So I did. It was all walk in.
So you didn't have anybody mentor you in hunting out of state and finding properties? Were you able to find much YouTube content about trying to like finding how to do that? Or is that
Uh,
something that you picked up on your own?
well, it was all YouTube. I mean, it was that
Yeah.
time when I was face down. It
Yep.
was everything I did was YouTube. Just I would search Kansas, Kansas public land, archery hunts. Just I would strategically type in things to kind of narrow that search down, even to the extent of like, so I stayed in Lucas my first year there, which I highly recommend. It's a very cool town. I highly recommend people go to Lucas, Kansas. I know that sounds made up. It's not made up. Go there. It's neat. Um, Tons of weehaw, tons of deer. But I just would like, I would even type in Lucas, Kansas archery hunting just to see if anybody typed it in. Nobody's dumb enough to do that, but nonetheless, I tried.
So, but you're doing it. You're teaching yourself how to do it as you go, right?
Yeah.
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 So this I think is really what what I'm not seeing people do today. I think people are they're tripping over like getting it perfect. Like, and
Oh yeah.
they want somebody to kind of mentor them through the whole process. And
Mm-hmm.
I've had mentors in my life for sure. So please don't hear me wrong in what I'm trying to say. Like someone had to teach me how to hunt and
Mm-hmm.
give me the basis. But I think it's this willingness to like drive out into Kansas or wherever
Mm-hmm.
by yourself with none of your friends for the first time.
Well, okay. I don't think I did not explain this, but I meant to. I brought my family with me the first time.
So you have your family, but
Yes. Nobody hunting. Nobody
yeah,
hunting.
yeah. They're not helping you scout and all that kind of stuff
Yeah.
and like plan the trip. Like you're bringing
Right.
them with. Yeah. So like you're going out there by yourself. I mean, you have your family. That's great. But and for me, that's how it started for me too. Like I just went out by myself one day. It's like I'm gonna go figure this out. Well, let me
Yep.
take that. No, let me take that back a little bit. I did get a small introduction. I had someone take me to Nebraska, but when I really started hitting the out of state, it was on my own, and I was just figuring it out on my own. And I think that gave me an advantage over a lot of other people in this. And it, I think other people are better hunters than me. They just don't like throw it against the wall and see what happens and just go out there. I think sometimes they plan it a little too much and it stops them from being able to have these awesome adventures. So the point I'm
Oh
trying to
yeah.
say is you're hearing two guys right now who didn't have that, who doesn't have like a huge upbringing in the hunting, heritage like a lot of people did. And we're just kind of like balls to the wall, throwing it out there, going out
Yeah.
there, stumbling over things and having a blast and killing deer while we do it. And
Mm-hmm.
so I want to encourage everybody, like, if you're scared to do something like this, like go out, just do it, right? Like,
Oh yeah. I
have you
could
seen?
not possibly say that any better because, like I said, I hurt myself to the extent I wasn't sure I was ever going to be able to do this again. And I said, I will never wonder what it's going to be like to do this or that or this or that. I'm just going to do it.
Mhm.
If I fail, I fail. Like I've been to Kansas 2 years in a row. I have not brought any deer home, but that first year I got on them at the very last day, last morning. And then this year we were in them the whole time. I just couldn't seal the deal. So, I mean, I think when people get caught up in the data, which there's nothing wrong with data, you almost have these blinders on to
Yeah.
everything. And so then you live in these hypothetical parameters that you have set, even knowing or not knowing, on yourself, and then you miss some stuff over here or over there because you were living in these parameters that you don't need. Just let it rip, man.
And I think hopefully I can remember to bring this back around when we start talking about this buck that you killed, because there's something there that at least I think I heard you talk about in the past that kind of made this hunt successful. So I'm just saying that so I remember it. So now let's bounce into this hunt for this year.
Yeah.
So now you're in Illinois,
Mm-hmm.
and when you're hunting in Illinois, I mean, are you hunting public, private,
So
lease?
in 2022, I picked up I found a piece of public land in an area where I had a construction site job going on. And I'm like, well, I'm going to be working here anyway. I'm just going to figure this out. And I chose to go there for 4 days after my oldest daughter's birthday. So I was going to go out the 19th, 20th, 21st, and 22nd of December. I was going to figure out how to get it done. And I ended up shooting a buck on my first sit, like at 1 o'clock. I got up at 3 in the morning and shot one at 1 o'clock in the afternoon.
It's amazing.
And yeah, so anyway, after that, it was like, dude, I can actually do this. Yes, there was a lot of bizarre circumstances with that deer. And maybe there's some bizarre circumstances with the deer that I shot in 2023 as well. However, I still did it. I still was in the right spot. I still read the sign. The deer ran right to me based on the topography of the land. I did it.
Yeah.
And so I shot a deer on public land, a buck, my first buck on out of state public land in Illinois. So after that, I said, okay, where are the bigger deer? If there's bucks this easy to shoot here, and I know people from Illinois are like, you idiot, shut up.
Yeah.
But there's got to be better bucks. Like that deer scored 111. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And I have told people this in the past. I have never seen, until this year in Kansas, I've never seen a deer like a 125, 130, 140. I've never seen one on the hoof. I wouldn't be able to identify that quality or that caliber of an animal on the hoof because I've never seen it. And so I said, I want to find a better deer. I want to find a more mature deer. I'd be willing, based on the hunter sign that I saw, I'd be willing to bet these deer are going to the far corner of this state land. And I tried to hike it one time and I couldn't do it. The topography just beat me up. I just couldn't do it. The briars, the steep terrain, I just physically couldn't get there. I said, well, that ain't going to work. And so I mailed some letters out in spring of 2023, January of 2023. And what it was going to do was allow me to walk through this farmer's property to the furthest point away from public access in this property. And she called me in early March and said, yeah, Bret, we give 2 people access every year. You're the first one. So have at her. I said, sweet. And so I said, thank you very much. Went through the whole, she didn't ask for anything from me. Like she just asked what kind of vehicle I drove and that was it. And so, public land in Illinois, baby. I went out there in early March, like 2 weeks later, maybe. And I ended up finding his sheds that first day I was there. And I knew he was my target. He was going to be my target all year.
Man, I have not found a shed in Illinois. I scouted in 20. So in 2022, I scouted 100 miles on one piece of property looking for sheds and could not find a shed to save my life. And I was like, is there even any deer here? And then the last ridge I went to, the sign blew up and I thought for sure I'm going to find sheds and still didn't find any sheds.
And I think that's interesting because I was just there when you were in Illinois like weekends ago. I didn't find any sheds.
Yeah.
I think there's something that I'm missing. There's a lot of things that I'm missing. There's something I'm missing about where they winter. Again, because we're always learning. Like I don't know where these deer winter. I know where I found those sheds the previous year. I also think there's a lot of deer still holding because my Michigan bucks are all still holding right now.
Oh, I should take that back. I just found a double. That's right. In Illinois, when I went there.
Look at this. You magically forgot you found a match set.
It was 10 feet off a biker's trail. Probably.
Are you serious?
5 feet from a picnic table. And it was a double set that fell right next to each other. Like he just shook his head and they fell off.
That is hilarious.
It is hilarious.
That's what happened to mine. So I went out there that first day and it started to snow. So I was walking my way back in and I was in the farmer's field. There's this little island of like super old oak trees. And I was just walking through there to get back to my truck. I'm like, those are antlers sticking out of the snow over there. And I think he just either leaned down to eat some acorns and they started falling, but they fell right next to each other.
Yeah. So this is the part of the story where you find the sheds, you decide that I'm killing this buck, you put all the pieces together and you come back and wipe them out first try. Like that's where we're at, right?
No. I wish it were that easy, but so I did find his sheds. They were the largest antlers I've ever had my hands on.
Yeah.
I think he was probably a high 140s, last in this 2022 season. They were really nice. Like but he did blow up. Like even from that, he blew up in 2023. So yes, they were the biggest antlers I've ever found. I thought, well, my hypothesis was correct. There are bigger deer here, but again, these antlers are on private property. I have no guarantee that this buck is in this public land. None.
That's right.
And okay. I found three or four other good sheds um, on the property as well, or in the public. The other ones were in the public. Um, and, they were, probably number two on the hit list, but this dude was number one for sure.
So you did create a hit. You did create a hit list for the year then, and you had
Yeah,
him on it.
I'll send you the picture of the other one that made it through the year for sure. He made it through hunting season for sure. Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah.
All right. So what's next on the story? So you come down, you find these sheds, you're pumped.
Yeah. And this particular area is in at least 1 hour away from the majority of my work. So if I'm going to Illinois for work, I'm gonna drive that extra hour after I do my work, and I'm gonna go in those woods for as long till dark if I have to. Every single time I'm here, I'm gonna make it a point to figure this area out because it's not the same area that I shot my buck in the year before. So it's totally new to me. It's real steep drainages. It's ag and how do they interact with each other? And there's again, I don't know where this buck is living. But I put out a couple of cameras and I got him on camera in like May. And I mean his genetics as it relates to his antlers are very specific as far as G2 and the G3 are concerned and his crab claws. And I knew it was him immediately in velvet. I knew it was him. And I thought, son of a gun, I found you. And he's in the public coming off of the private though. So he's coming off of the private going into the public almost every day.
Wow.
Yeah.
All right. So you all summer you're just eaten up by this deer, I would imagine.
Yeah. And I've never had to walk through corn before. So this was a new thing for me is how do I get that 3/4 of a mile walk from my truck to the woods? Because the farmer plants the corn right up to the barbed wire fence. I've never had to deal with that. I don't really like that. But anyway, yeah, I'm going there as much as I can. And realistically, it's probably once a month. I'm in Illinois and I'm in the woods and I'm watching the woods change. So I've watched the green up. And it's funny, you guys talked about this in your last podcast, the stinging nettle.
Brutal.
Which don't let me forget that. The stinging nettle, the acorns, there's so many acorns. And I know this is not helping my cause. There's tons of corn in the private, like there's corn and there's acorns and there's stinging nettle. And I'm like, how am I going to figure out how to get on this deer? And probably in July or August, I walked through the corn and I realized I've never been in corn that's over my head. Like this is 8, 9, 10 foot tall corn. It is very intimidating, especially in the dark. I get into the opening of this state land and it's a sea of stinging nettle, but it is completely mowed off at the top. And I thought, man, I did not know that deer ate stinging nettle.
Mm-hmm.
And there is 20 acres of it right here. How am I going to get on this deer? Like, I know he's coming in here. He's got acorns and corn and stinging nettle. And I had lost him at this point. He's in July or August. I mean, he is full size basically. And I know it's him. I got cameras that are dead. And so I can't find him. I haven't seen him in like a month. And I'm wearing my heavy duty pants as I'm maneuvering my way through the stinging nettle. And I work my way back off the main travel corridor for the deer. That big worn down path, the muddy path. It's obviously a deer trail. And I'm standing in this sea of stinging nettle, terrified that there's snakes below. I'm not a snake man. You and I spoke about this the other day. Not a snake guy. And I'm sitting there going, where did he go? Where did he go? And I'm just kind of like looking off into the distance. And I've gotten pretty good at figuring this out. You're seeing this in the woods. Those faint trails, the non-obvious deer trails or game trails. And I can see probably 30, 40 yards to the side of the main deer trail. There appears to be stinging nettle missing in a straight line running parallel with that main deer trail. And I go, that's interesting. Wonder what that is. And so I walk over to it and I followed it. And it walked parallel to the main deer trail the whole entire way from private down into a drainage. And it went down into a drainage and up and it hit, and there was a scrape. But it wasn't this giant car hood scrape, but it was twisted off licking branches the size of my pinky at like 6'1", 6'2", like up. I'm 6 foot even, like up at my hairline or higher. And I'm like, well, that's not a little doe doing this. Yeah, it could be a deer on its hind legs, but this scrape is getting hit on this faint trail by a deer that's not small. I'm going to put a camera on it. And I hung my camera one stick high, like 10 foot high. Cause again, it was on the upper hillside of the coming out of this drainage. So I wanted to be sort of parallel to it. The first night he was there. And I said, gotcha.
How good did that feel?
Unbelievable.
Yeah.
I mean, I probably squealed like a little girl when we were upstairs. Like we always watched TV before the kids go to bed, and I probably squealed. Who knows? But I was pumped, man, because all other cameras were picking up does and maybe a little buck here or there, but he had been evading everything else because he had sort of just worked his way further back into the state land. He was getting away from the ag and where all the does were. The does were eating in the corn and eating the acorns and eating the stinging nettle. And he's like, too much going on over there. So he just kind of scooted his way back and was still probably doing the same thing he had always been doing, but just scooted a little further away. And so then I just kind of watched him up until season.
Any chance that your camera moved him? You ever thought about that?
So the first camera I was picking him up on, he would get right in front of that camera and look at it and
care.
He'd hit it every day. He'd be in front of it every day. I don't think the cameras bothered him.
Okay.
I really don't.
Yeah.
Which is weird. He ended up being 5.5. So for a 5.5-year-old deer, I don't know how much human interaction he ever had outside of the farmer. He didn't care. He didn't care about that camera at all. I don't know he ever looked at that one at the scrape, but the other one he definitely looked at.
Mm-hmm. Oh, man, that's so awesome.
Yeah.
So then that's September, you said, when this happens?
Yeah. So he had shed his velvet and he was hitting that scrape every couple days. And I've got just the most incredible pictures of him interacting with other bucks, good bucks in that scrape, on that scrape, identifying that he was the patriarch of those woods. He was the alpha. I never saw him sparring, but I would see him, kind of lean their antlers down like, oh yeah, look at that. He would do that a couple times. I got some really incredible pictures right before season, which really makes it hard to figure out where you're going opening day.
Yeah. Yeah. So probably not, right? You knew what you're going to do, right?
Man, I thought I did, but again, we in the beginning we sort of spoke about this community, the people we spend time with, and you never know when it's going to be your last hunt. And one of those guys that I sort of started Angell Road with, I think he's alive, but he's not around anymore, and it kind of hurts because we don't really know what we did wrong, but he's not around it. And so I thought it was really important that I spend opening day with my brother and my other. So my brother is Adam, and then the other guy is Adam. So there's up north Adam, and then my brother. So yeah, we spent opening day in Michigan.
Man, you're way better than me. I'm just gonna be honest. Like, you're way better than me. I really appreciate that about you too. So so let me ask you some questions here about this kind of scouting and is this normal for you? Like when you go, like up until that point, had you gone into places, scouted and gotten curious like this and started breaking down what you were seeing to that extent?
No. And that has matured over time with my growth and desire to be a better hunter. I had started scouting more in depth at our private piece here in Michigan. When I went to Kansas, I learned a whole bunch and sort of implemented that. When I went to Illinois that first time, I it was the same property, so I really had to learn a lot. No, it has grown more over time for sure.
Was there ever a moment when you're scouting and you realize you're doing something different than you've done in the past and it hits you? Like, I think I might have just moved up a level.
It was that right there. It was that standing. It was standing there wanting to find the answer and just taking it all in, like not in a hurry. I was just standing there like, okay, just take a breath, look around and say why. Why haven't you found him? Why is he not on? He was on camera every day. Why is he not on camera now? And just looking at everything, the stinging nettle being mowed off at the top, the deer trail right here, the scrape over there that he hasn't hit in a while. And then just kind of just taking it all in all at the same time. And then just being able to visually identify that what appeared to be lone game trail. That was the moment.
That you the key phrase there was taking your time, like
Yeah.
not being in a hurry. That same thing happened to me. I remember when it happened because I'm kind of in a hurry guy.
Me
Like
too.
yeah, always. And like my brother laughs about it all the time. He's like, "You're the busiest guy I know," you know. And a lot of times I don't have a lot going on, but I'm always in a hurry, so it looks like
Yeah.
I do. So I'm when I'm scout, I'm in a hurry, you know.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden I slowed down. I remember when it happened, and that thought of like, okay, take my time. All those questions that you just asked. Why is this happening right here?
Yeah.
Why is that like? And getting curious. Like I think for me, and now listening to you, I think that like we all look for that magic wand or that special like I don't know education or understanding that all of a sudden happen. And I don't know if it's that. I think it's just like curiosity. And I
Oh,
think that
yeah.
that's what makes a good deer hunter. It's not that they know everything every time they walk into a place and they have this like list. I mean, there is a list you can build, and with experience, you start to build it, but it's that curiosity of like, wait a second, what's that?
Mm-hmm.
Why? And I remember when that happened for me, and I was standing there, and all of a sudden I took a moment and stopped scouting and just appreciated the fact that, man, I think I just leveled up. You know,
Yeah.
like
Absolutely.
it felt really good.
Yeah. You're right. You're right because you have these hypotheses going on in your brain when you're doing that because you realize I don't know everything.
Mhm.
So I'm going to try to take this all in and try to do. And you and I sort of talked about this on when you were on my show about how you do all these little math equations in your brain, for lack of a better term, and you're doing them subconsciously, and you're churning out little answers, and you're crossing things off, and you're adding things to the list, and you're doing all these little things. And when you finally have proof of concept, like oh my idea, that's exactly what's happening. You're right. It feels really good and it actually drives you to want to do that more.
Yeah. And when you do it more, I actually feel less rushed, less. I feel like
Yeah.
I have less to do when I do that, honestly.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like I noticed that this year when I went scouting again, I was walking in, there's a moment where I just kind of stopped and it didn't feel as overwhelming as the list that I used to have in my mind, you know?
Yeah.
And just allowing whatever's there to be the thing that kind of moves me, you know,
Yeah.
just being curious. It's so much more of a relaxing way to scout and to hunt.
Yeah.
Yeah, I wish I would have done it a long time ago. Anyways, I just find that really interesting that we kind
Mhm.
of resonate in that. Again, same kind of on the timing too. Like we're
Yeah.
kind of shadowing each other here. So okay. So you hunt Michigan. I don't want to
Yeah.
rush you through that.
No, you're good, man. But I got to tell you, I did have to write some notes down because the way that I had to hunt this deer in this area was like I had already committed to going to Kansas, and so telling my lovely bride who is home with 3 children that I also want to take an extended period of time in Hunt, Illinois, I just didn't think that was going to go over very well. So I had to parlay my work trips with little hunting trips. And I thought, well, if I can dial this in, certainly I'll be able to get a morning hunt and an afternoon hunt and a job visit and then go home and everyone's still happy. Like I was there for maybe 8 more hours than I would have normally been away from home. You know, I'll sleep in my truck if I have to. whatever. I'm just going to figure this out on little short bursts. And so, again, we spent opening weekend here in Michigan, had a great time with everybody. The weather was nice. I didn't really have any hitless bucks in Michigan at all this year. There were no bucks on our property that blew my skirt up. And so I was just happy to be with the boys and be in the woods. Like I love it down there. And I take my camper down to the campsite and we set it all up and we kind of live there, or we leave it there for a month, and it just, anyway, loved it. So I didn't get to Illinois. I mean, it was soon, but it wasn't that first weekend. My first sit was on October 5th. So, it was nice that I was able to get there quickly because he was pretty regular. One thing to the story that I didn't add was somebody else had access out here.
That's right.
And I didn't learn that until late. Like, I had met one of the neighbors one night because he's like, I saw you coming through the corn and it weirded me out after dark, so he came out to talk to me. Anyway, he's like, I thought he must have introduced himself to the other guy. See, that's what I thought it was him. And anyway, whatever. That during the season is when I realized there was another guy hunting. And so at this point, I'm naive to thinking that I'm the only person who has access to this gigantic deer. And I'm so pumped. I don't really remember. I think it was still pretty warm at this time. The corn was still up. It was an afternoon sit. And again, I have to figure out a way to walk 3/4 of a mile through this corn quietly, which I was never able to figure out. I couldn't do it. So I tried to get out there. I had worked my way probably like a mile and a half out from the truck to the area where he was most frequently on camera, coming off of the private into the public in the evenings. Got out there in the 0.5, got set up, and saw nothing, which is pretty typical. I mean, I don't know if I really thought I was going to shoot him on the first sit, but I mean, that's where he had been most frequently in the evening. So it was as good a chance as any. Saw nothing, worked my way out of there in the evening, walked back to the truck. I think I slept in the truck that night. My second sit was the following morning. I ended up going to where I had been that scrape on that lone trail. I ended up setting up there. Good wind. I had really good wind every single time I hunted this area to kill him, except for the night that I killed him. It was an off wind. It was just barely off. Ended up working, but anyway. So the second sit, I sat there in the morning. Had a doe come in behind me and a spike come in out of the drainage. The spike came in exactly perfect. The same trail that the bucks had been taking, the big bucks, but only a spike that day. So then after that I had to get to work. So I wasn't able to come back to Illinois, which I guess is pretty close. On the 10th. So the following week I was back in Illinois. Again, I left the house in the morning just for an afternoon sit. And this time I had decided I wasn't going to go over to that area, the same area I sat the first time. I wanted to sit in the acorns. I wanted to figure out if he was eating acorns before he was either coming into or going out of the corn. Again, I'm still sort of doing an observation sit. Because I've never seen him yet. I don't necessarily know what he's doing except hitting that one camera periodically. Set up in the afternoon. I see no deer in front of me, but I look across the private and I can see some pretty good deer moving through the private. And then I don't end up knowing where they go. They go up and down some hills and I kind of lose them. So no deer in front of me. On my third sit, and I'm starting to get kind of annoyed because as stupid as it sounds, I certainly thought I was going to have it done by sitting. I really, again, this power of positivity, the mental toughness, I really was maybe just a little cocky, I thought I'd have had it done by now. So we're third sit, no deer. I'm not happy. Um, my fourth sit was the next morning. I kind of just threw this one away. So after my third sit in that flat, not seeing any deer, um, I had decided that it was my fault that I wasn't seeing any deer and that I couldn't get through the corn quiet enough. I really thought that access where I was coming in, although loud through the corn, was far enough away from the deer that it was my fault that the deer weren't visible.
Mm-hmm.
So even though I had good wind, I knew that was my last hunt until the corn comes down. So the following morning, I sat in a completely different area over by like, the public parking area. And I just walked in, sat, saw nothing.
Mm-hmm.
And I wasn't even surprised, nor was I mad because I was like, I'm here. I'm going to hunt because crazier things have happened here. So let's just be in a tree and see what happens. But that morning they started taking some corn down next door. I said, okay, this is positive. So again, that's October 11th. Morning sit, no deer. That was kind of my throwaway. And then I did not come back to Illinois for an entire month.
Wow.
Because Adam and I went to Kansas at the end of October. So we went to Kansas in what's really prime time here. And that cold front that came through over Halloween, I probably should have been in Illinois, man.
Yeah.
All the
Yeah.
cameras were lit up. Even in Michigan, they were lit up with every buck that we had on camera in Michigan and every buck in Illinois was daylighting that cold front that came through.
Yep. Yep.
So,
are your spirits going down now? Because you're seeing all the cameras and everything like that, and it's been some time. You've had some shots at them.
it was a little bit of a mental kick in the genitals that when we were in Kansas, because again, we were in deer in Kansas. Oh, so the first morning in Kansas, I had it had to be a 140 at first light walk into me, and my stupid bow coming across my bridge hit a tree limb, and he heard it and saw me and took off. So yeah, so there's that happens, and then that afternoon, all these bucks are on daylight camera in Illinois and in Michigan. So yeah, I was a little bit discouraged, but we had a great time in Kansas, getting my brother out of his comfort zone. I mean, talk about a new hunter. Adam's a really new hunter. Getting him to do that and spending time just he and I in Kansas. And I mean, we hunted our balls off out there and had a great time. Adam had some close encounters with a deer that almost is comical. The amount of similar scenarios that he found himself face to face with this buck in is almost unbelievable. So we had just a great time. So yes, my morale was a little low, but we were still doing something pretty awesome.
Mm-hmm.
We came home in early November, and obviously I haven't seen my family in like 8 or 9 days. So it was, spend some time at home. Obviously it took some time off of work, so I got to get back at it. And it's getting to be like the busy time of the year for me. So you and I sort of talked before the show that deer season is my busiest time at work, which is absolutely offensive to me, but it is the busiest time of work for me. We're trying to squeeze in all of our new restaurant openings in Q4. And so, it's whatever you got to do to get it done, you got to do it. And so I actually had a project in Davenport, Iowa, which depends on who you talk to is, where my hunting spot was sort of on the way. And I had a final walkthrough to do at this restaurant, and on the 14th of November. And I just said, you know what? I'm going to go throw a hunt. I knew the corn was down. I had a camera that could pick up a little bit of the ag, and I could see the machines. And so I knew the corn was down. And so I was pretty excited. So I got a punch list walkthrough in Davenport, Iowa on the 14th, but I'm going to go hunt I'm going to leave my house on Monday, the 13th. I'm going to hunt that afternoon. I'm going to hunt the morning of the 14th. I'm going to go to Iowa, and I'm going to come home. I mean, that's what my brain tells me. That's what I did. But anyway, my wife does yoga on Monday mornings. super convenient for getting out of the house and going anywhere or doing anything. At a decent hour anyway. So it's a 6.5 hour drive from my house to the property. My wife gets home at like 10:30 from yoga in the morning. I'm packed. I'm loaded up. I'm ready to go. Kiss the family goodbye, get in the truck, and I drive 6.5 hours to the state land in Illinois. And just as planned. I mean, it's exactly as planned, except really, I'm going to get there a little bit later than I'd want to.
Mm-hmm.
Time has changed. So the sun, although still setting at the same time, is now setting an hour earlier. So it's getting darker earlier, and I'm concerned. Historically, I do not have an easy drive from Clarkston, Michigan to my destination.
Mm-hmm.
There is usually backups on 80 in Indiana. There is usually backups around metropolitan Chicago at some point. So I was not feeling optimistic that I was going to have a very good hunt that on Monday the 13th. And so I'm sort of frustratedly, poutingly driving to Illinois. And the one thing that I did good, one thing that I did very well was I played this scenario in my brain of putting my hands on his antlers and holding them in my hands and just looking at him up close. And it wasn't the scenario of me drawing my bow back and settling the pin and releasing the arrow. It was just me being with him,
Mm-hmm.
up close and personal. And I think I probably played that scenario out in my head for 6.5 hours straight. And I was, anxiously chewing my fingers. And, I had the best drive I've ever had in my entire life. I hit every green light. There was absolutely no traffic. I got there in record time, probably 6 hours and 10 minutes. It was unheard of. Why? I'll never know. I arrived in Illinois at like 3:30 in the afternoon. I didn't even change my clothes. I wore my t-shirt, my regular pants that I was wearing. I put my boots on. I got on my bike, my pedal bike, and I thought I'm going to pedal bike it across. Oh, and I decided to saddle hunt. And I made a conscious decision this day to not bring any self-filming equipment into the woods. I knew I had very limited time. By the time I left my truck, got set up, I was going to have maybe a 90-minute hunt. So nothing else mattered. It was just me getting out there, and realistically, I assumed I would have a really lame hunt and then just hunt that same set in the morning. Like my plan was to leave my saddle set up in the tree and come back there in the morning and hunt that same set. I get about 11 feet out into the chisel plowed cornfield and realize this pedal bike ain't going to cut it. So sorry, there was a gnat on my microphone. So I dump the bike in the middle of the cornfield and I pull my bow off of those little pinchers that are on the handlebars. And I just start walking across the cornfield, probably swearing, angry about everything, angry that my wife got home at 10:30 and that she does yoga on a Monday morning, angry about everything, angry about the time change and everything. I get about 100 yards from the wood line and a doe pops out. I thought, son of a bitch, I'm too late.
Mm-hmm.
I'm too late. And then another doe pops out. And so I'm just frozen, standing in the wide open chisel plowed cornfield, watching these deer literally jump the fence where I'm about to jump the fence. And so again, I've almost resolved to just going and setting my setup and being done with it. So I stand there for a second and I don't know what to do. Again, time is of the essence here. I'm running out of daylight, literally. And I decide, you know what? I don't care. The deer don't see me. I'm just going to walk to the woods and I'm going to blow them out. So I walk right to where they're standing. They take off as expected. I get to the barbed wire fence and there is another deer in the woods that hadn't come out yet. And I never saw this deer, but I have a theory that it was him.
Mm-hmm.
I think he was chasing those does up out of that drainage, out into that cut cornfield. I just don't think he had gotten there yet. He didn't blow, but this particular deer bounded back down into the drainage. And again, I didn't see him. I didn't think much of it other than it was another deer.
Mm-hmm.
Surprise. So I walked in and I worked my way over to that scrape where the camera had been, where he had been most frequently, where he had passed that morning going down into the drainage. And again, the wind is a little off. So it's not necessarily in my favor to set up directly over that scrape or even shoot the scrape. So I get about 60 yards or so to the south of the scrape, and I find the perfect tree that I can get about 12 foot up into the crotch, tuck myself in, and I can still see the scrape. And if he comes downwind of it, he'll be 30 yards or so. But behind me, I'm unfamiliar with this entirely. Like I know nothing about what's going on behind me. I've never hunted here. It's all blind to me. And so I set up, predominantly where I can shoot a 30, 35, 40 yard shot over towards that scrape. That's my ideal scenario. The wind is just right to where I'll catch him before he wins me in a perfect scenario. Should it work? Should he come out of that drainage like I expect? That's how I sort of drew it up. Nothing, no deer, no squirrels, no birds, no nothing. And that's okay. I had resolved. I mean, if anybody's seen my video, I've already got my headlamp on my hat. Like I have committed to just walking out of there in the dark. Like I am ready to go almost. No self-filming equipment. I've just got my jacket on, my bow's sitting there. But periodically I'll throw some grunts out. Just some blind calling. I've always been a blind caller. I don't know. Do you do that at all?
Not a lot, no. No.
You're strategic in it.
Yeah, from time to time I'll do it, but towards in the last couple of years, I've just really haven't done much of it because I don't recall it ever really working out for me all that much.
So I do it, I think, because I'm bored sometimes.
That's why I was doing it, honestly. Yeah.
But I also knew that my target had gone down into that drainage in the morning, and I didn't see him come out. And he has come out in shooting light in the last 4 or 5 days. So if he is slowly working his way to the ag, if I throw out a grunt, maybe he'll hear it.
Yep.
I don't. Again, at the time, I don't know that he was chasing those does. I have no idea. I believe he was today. At the time, I didn't know. 4:45 rolls around, and from directly behind me, I can hear a deer walking in the woods. Like, the leaves are dry. Like, I've said this before, the long steps, the dragging of the hoof, that I always call it a long step, toe drag, and big buck walk. Like, it's very obvious.
Mm-hmm.
So I whip my head around real smooth. Not at all. I whip my head around, and this deer, this buck, I don't know it's him at first. He's a good 80 yards away, maybe more. But he's coming up out of this slight low spot that I've never seen before. And he's working his way to where I came in from the ag. So he's never going to be closer in my brain than 75, 80 yards. And I'm trying to get him in my rangefinder because I don't bring my binoculars because I'm an idiot. I'm trying to get him in the rangefinder to get my eye on him. And I settle it on him and said, "Holy shit, that's him." And he's, like I said, 75, 80 yards working towards the corn where those does ran, where I walked in. And I reached for my grunt, and something inside said, "Knock it off."
Mm-hmm.
Just let him show you what he wants to do. And so I did. I did nothing. I grabbed my bow. I turned around in my saddle slowly and smoothly this time. And I got my left hand on the thumb release, and I put a little bit of tension on the string, just holding it in place. And I just sat there and watched him. And I'll never know why he did this. but he took about 20 yards towards the corn and made a direct right turn and walked in a straight line directly to me.
Wow.
I have no idea why. There's no terrain feature that says he should do that. There's no obstacles that he could not walk around, but he walked to 22 yards and he turned again broadside. And this time now he's facing the corn, but he's 22 yards from me, and I'm not drawn back because initially he was walking in a straight line at me, and I'm not a frontal shot guy. I just don't have a lot of confidence in that yet, and I'm shooting mechanicals, which I think are frowned upon. And so he turns broadside, and again, I'm just going to let him tell me what he's going to do here. I can let him walk. He hasn't seen me. There's no reason to panic. He takes 2 or 3 steps, and his head goes behind a tree, and I draw back. He gets past that tree, and he stops again. And I don't know if he heard me draw. I don't know if he caught anything out of his peripheral, but he stopped dead broadside at 21 yards. And I let it fly, and that nocturnal zipped right through his lungs, and he didn't. I mean, it was so bizarre. He just turned and ran exactly back the direction he came, up to the high spot on that spine of the ridge, standing in the stinging nettle, and he stood there and tipped over in 10 seconds.
Oh my gosh. You got to see it?
I watched him tip over in 10 seconds. I heard him kick his feet, and then he was dead silent. It was the most surreal thing I've ever experienced. I was so calm. I wasn't shaking. It was almost unbelievable. And I think I told this to you. I think I wore myself out anxiety wise on my drive there.
Mm-hmm.
My nerves were already gone. There was nothing to get worked up about. It was exactly like I had drawn it up and imagined it to be. It worked out absolutely flawlessly. And I cannot believe it.
Yeah, we talked about manifestation.
Yeah.
Of deer hunting, and I've used it in other parts of my life, and I don't say that like in a cosmic kind of way.
No.
But I do. There's something there. I know for a fact there's something there because I've done it on other parts of my life. And I did it with my deer as well this year. And on like, just take away everything else I said, but on this part, what you said, it was so true. It's like you wear yourself out thinking through everything, and to the point where you don't worry, and all of a sudden you're very calm in the moment.
So
and
calm.
I'm typically like, I wasn't calm like that normally. Like I don't have buck fever to the point where I lose my mind. I don't know what's going on, but I definitely have it. Like I mean, and if I don't have it, like if I were just like ho hum every time a deer walked in and I shot, I probably wouldn't hunt anymore.
Oh, that doesn't seem fun at all.
No, I like the adrenaline dump, and I like to like kind of like talk myself down and go through it. But what was so cool about listening to you, it's like it's almost like on this special of a deer, I don't know if I would want to have to think through all that kind of stuff. I would want to be where you're at. I would want to have already thought about it, had the excitement in my mind prior to, already had almost that make believe adrenaline dump in my head, and to enjoy, because it's a different type of enjoyment. You're just enjoying the whole process, like you said. You're like, I don't have to. I can let him walk here. Like he doesn't know. He doesn't know I'm here. Like that. To me, I just want to sit on that for a second. That thought process is insane to me, right? So, like, as you talk about, you're talking about the deer that you've killed, which are all very respectable, but this is another level of deer. You've now got them. You've thought about them. You've obsessed about them for like a year, practically, and now you're like, I can let him walk, and I can let him show me what he's going to do here. It's a different type of confidence, and it's not like this weird cocky false confidence. It's just in tuned with everything that's going on. Like it's really amazing to listen. And you probably didn't think about it while it was happening. I don't know. Did you? Did you all of a sudden? Did it occur to you that like, man, I'm really calm right now? Like,
no, no, not until I was done. Not until I was done did I realize I was so calm. But I was conscious that I was having a conversation with myself in my head.
Yes,
I knew that I was talking to myself.
Mm-hmm.
I was almost I felt like I was answering myself, like, okay. When I said let
Yeah.
him walk, I felt like I said, okay. And and honestly, listen, that comes from making mistakes.
Yeah.
I made I've made plenty of mistakes. I'm sure I'll make them every single year. Um, and and the overarching theme in the beginning of this podcast was turning a negative into a positive.
Yes.
And I was so freaking mad that I couldn't leave my house early enough to get to Illinois to hunt this buck that I was mad at everybody.
Mm-hmm.
But somehow I was able to remain confident in my ability to get out there. And even though there was a little, like I said, oh, screw it, I'm just going to go set my stuff. I still sat there. Like I could have set
Mm-hmm.
my saddle gear up and left, but I sat there with the absolute best hope that that deer would still come out because I was there and I knew he was there. And even though I was mad about everything, I was able to go into the woods with a positive attitude. I know it doesn't sound like it, but I did.
It is. Yeah.
And I was consciously calm. And in my opinion, I didn't rush the shot. I took him ethically, and I sat with him for a half an hour when I was done,
Oh.
when I found him, and just thanked him and ogled him for a half an hour and told him how handsome he was.
Yeah.
And I think I apologized to him.
Yeah. 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 Which have you ever done anything like that with another
No,
buck? Yeah.
no.
Yep. It's
I've
a
never
whole.
seen anything like this. I've never seen an animal like I've never seen a whitetail whose body was this big, whose antlers were this massive to me, whose legs and hooves were just gigantic. In his, I've never seen anything like that. It was hard to even. I have a little video of like when I walk up on him and I'm like, I can't even put it into words.
Yeah.
I've never seen anything like that.
So you said something about like you could have like turned around. You could have just hung your stuff and hunt the next day.
Yeah.
You could have gotten there and said, crap, my buck's not gonna get through here. The deer already coming out. I'm leaving. And I was talking to a guy today. We were talking about data driven, like how much data do we need? And I was saying I think sometimes data frees people up and they've blocked themselves from getting it done because just getting there really and getting in as close as you're getting into them. So I mean, I'm assuming like, okay, you find this scrape, you find all this stuff, like you got to think he's bedded pretty close to there where
Yeah.
and he's coming through there. So you're getting yourself right into the heart of where you've had all these encounters with him on the camera and stuff like that. And your wind isn't as perfect as you wanted it to be. You're in a spot in a tree that you've never been in before. Like all of these things would have been things that in the past, I know for me, I would have been like, this isn't going to work. This
Yeah.
is all falling apart. And honestly, in the past, I might have walked away in that point. I might have been like, this isn't, I'll regroup tomorrow.
Oh yeah, me too.
Yeah,
Sure.
but it's that commitment to go like, no, I'm just going to put myself in it. And I don't want to call it luck because that word, for when people hear that, it brings up a different image than what I'm trying to paint. But it's getting in there like that and staying committed to it despite everything kind of not working out the way you wanted to do. You created opportunity.
Yeah.
By putting yourself in that spot, even though everything didn't line up. And that's a lesson that I learned too, that I really want everyone who hasn't been able to experience this type of hunt that you've had and hasn't been able to unlock those next levels in their journey. I think that is one of like the real keys to unlock there is to go, no, move in and get yourself there because that is half of the problem or half of the journey, like to get it done. And that doesn't mean like throwing everything into the wind and say, screw it, I don't have to think about it.
Yeah.
Because that's why I don't want to call it luck, because you are thinking about all of this other data
Yes.
and all this other work that you put in, but you're making the opportunity happen just by being there. If that makes sense. I don't know if I can articulate what I'm trying to say.
So luck would have been the arrow left my rest early and hit a limb and hit him directly in the vitals. That's luck.
Yep.
I made I made exceptions to the rule
Yes.
in order to have a hunt that afternoon. I was
Hmm.
in a tree I'd never been in. The wind was a little off. I wasn't exactly where I wanted to be. I was a little later than I wanted to be there. Those were all, I made a little exceptions like, oh, well. So, like this deer right here, everybody slept in because it was storming. I didn't.
Hmm.
I went out because I can't kill him from the camper.
Yeah.
You sometimes you just got to go out. And as soon as that storm stopped and the wind calmed down, he came flying across the street.
Yeah.
So just like you said, the data can twist you up, man. Sometimes you just got to take what you know and go out there and trust your gut sometimes.
Yeah. So I've heard Andy May talk about that. I think even one of his last mule deer hunts, like the wind was crazy and everything isn't lining up. And so he just makes adjustments to it. But when he talks, it's Andy May. And I'm
Yeah.
like, well, yeah, you're the supreme being who, can float in and kill deer
Sure.
like this. And it's not that. He's just like mastered this thing right here. Like, okay, it's, the data says this, it would be ideal for me to hunt this animal on this wind and all this, but that's not what I have right now.
Right.
And so I've got X amount of days. I mean, you had very limited time.
Yeah.
So walking away and going home that's a for sure you're not getting it done.
Yep.
And just like Andy did on that one, it's like, no, we just adapt and we make it happen. And that
Mhm.
sounds like when I heard that when I was, trying to get more experience and trying to get there, that would freeze me up and go, I just don't have that ability. You don't get that ability until you do it. You just got to go do it, man. Like I'm trying to encourage people, just get out there, don't freeze up on the data and go after it.
Yep.
Just do it. Like
Go
Nike
out there.
says.
Dude, I was walking in from outside today and I go, I'm going to use the Nike slogan today and tell them that I just made up this new slogan that I'm going to start using and say, just do it as a joke. Cause I know obviously that's the Nike
Yeah.
slogan. Seriously, just get off your ass and go do it. Stop saying that it's too rainy. Stop saying that it's too far or it's too hard or your wife's too mean. Just go do it, man.
Yeah.
Stop. There's too many excuses.
And I wonder how I definitely think like Andy May and them have like superb talent. So I mean, don't
Yeah.
hear any kind of like I'm trying to compare myself to him or anything like that. But I think that is what killers do. They just go do it. They don't let the excuses or the data stop them.
Yeah.
They use the data, but they just go do it. And I think if more people did that, we would all have a lot more success. But it goes back to even earlier parts of like, hey, I'm going to go out of state.
Mm-hmm.
Hey, I'm going to go to Kansas, never been there, just go do it. Hey, I'm going to go to Illinois, never been there, just go do it.
Yep.
And that really is the secret sauce. We want the secret sauce to be something else, but it isn't. It's just go out there and do it.
100%.
Yeah.
That is 100% accurate. And you know, it's real easy to just say, oh well, it's too expensive or it's too far or gas is too much. Well, make some sacrifices this summer. Maybe stop buying a case of beer every single week and just you take that same money, put it in. I know a lot of people probably just turn this off. So I'm sorry about your downloads, but seriously, just sacrifice something else if this is really what you want to do. If it's really important to you, you will find a way or you'll find a reason not to.
I think I know the answer to this. Do you think you're the shit when it comes to deer hunting?
Me?
Yeah.
Good God, no.
Exactly. I wanted to say that because people could go, well, these guys killed some bucks. Now look at them. No, that's not what we're saying at all. Like,
No.
I have no clue what this year's going to bring or next year's going to bring. What we're saying is like, we are so normal that if you just go out there and do it, it actually it will work for you too, because you're just like us.
It can.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. Yeah, on whatever level that is too, right? Like, yeah, that's so amazing. So I want to ask you a couple questions come up. When you first saw this, when you first got his antlers, I made this kind of funny remark, but when you saw those antlers, did you think that you were going to hunt that deer the next year?
Yeah.
That you did. That's awesome, man.
You mean his sheds?
Yeah, sorry. When you
Yeah.
saw his sheds. When you picked up his sheds and that you made your mind up then, like, I'm gonna go for this deer.
Yes, and the interesting thing, he was number one. There were two other shooters out there that I would have been happy with any. Again, I have never seen a 130 or 140 on the hoof. I would be happy shooting any deer that gets me excited. I just knew that this deer was here and it would be exciting to see him. And should he present me an opportunity, that was I say number one target. And maybe I've been saying that incorrectly because I think when you have a target, you are actively doing everything in your power to
Mm-hmm.
attain that target. I think he was my number one crush,
Yeah.
for lack of a better term, because I was going to shoot another buck if he would have walked in front of me. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
there's no doubt about it. I wasn't so naive to think that I was good enough to get on this deer. But never in a million years. He was my he was my crush. He was my dream buck, and it just happened. I was
So
putting myself in scenarios where the odds were in my favor, but should a different buck been in my presence, he was going to get it.
yeah, you just said what I was gonna. You just clarified what I was gonna clarify. Like, don't hear that wrong. Like, you were strategizing and you were going after that buck.
Yeah,
But if another buck that tickled the senses walked in, the arrow was gonna go.
yeah, and I think it's even today. I don't think I'm smart enough to technically target a specific deer, but
Same.
I'm smart enough to put myself in scenarios that could theoretically benefit me in the long run.
And that wraps up what I was trying to say.
Yeah.
Like, you don't have to be all the way over there. You don't have to be Andy May. But yeah, you don't have to have it all figured out in order for, the deer gods to smile at you. And don't dismiss that. Like, that's, you're learning and you're on another level, and that's so awesome, man.
But
I
you gotta
love
love
this.
it. You
You
gotta
do.
love you
You
gotta
got
love
to.
all of it. You gotta love the stinging nettle through your thin pants, which I don't recommend. You
No,
gotta
no.
love flicking ticks off your pants. You gotta love the briars in your arms, in your face, and you're close to your eye that you already injured. You gotta love the smaller buck that wasn't your target. You gotta love all of it because if you don't, then just stop, man. Because
Mhm.
you're gonna eat yourself up and it ain't gonna be worth it. You gotta love the whole part of this. The good, the bad, and the ugly. You gotta love it all.
Yeah, you can't just love the picture of you holding the
No.
buck. No, not at all. That's an empty trophy, actually, if that's the only thing that drives you, you know?
Everybody says this, and I'm gonna say it too. Nobody gives a flying F that I shot that deer.
No.
Nobody.
I think it's
You,
awesome, but you're
I
right.
mean,
Like, no,
you get yeah,
nobody cares about any. Like, it's funny. Yeah, that's just the way we are in today's age. Where in the old days, people would have been like, "Holy cow!" And
yeah.
now I was like, "Yeah, I saw that 3 other times today on Instagram." Like,
I
good for
just
you.
wanna I just wanna be able to look at that and remember that night forever.
Yeah.
Like I called my wife, I called my buddies, and I was like, I just shot my Illinois target. I shot the Illinois giant. I stopped naming deers. I shot the Illinois giant. I shot him. I
Yeah.
couldn't believe it. And I had to call my brother on my walk to the truck. I'm like, dude, I cannot believe this. I'll never forget it. And I want to be able to look at all of these and remember that whole scenario. And no, I didn't get it on camera. And no, I don't have a bunch of incredible grip and grin photos because I was by myself, but you know, I'll never forget it.
Yeah.
The whole
Yep.
thing from finding his sheds to writing that lady a letter and getting her to call me. And the whole thing's amazing.
Man, it is amazing. It's a great story. I'm so glad you shared it. So before we close up, is there anything you want to share with the listeners? I mean, don't feel pressure. Like, if you're like, "Hey, we covered it all, great." But if
I
you,
think we just did. I think we just did in the you got to get out there and do it, and you just got to love all of it. Like you can't be in this for just the ups because there's going to be more downs than there are ups, and you got to love the process. You got to love screwing up, and you got to love you know learning and growing and having the successes and having the fail. You got to love the whole thing. And yes, it's hard, but it's totally fucking worth it.
yeah, totally. Yeah, I'm gonna add something for people to walk away with. We always try to give like some kind of technique or something when they come and listen. And I think it's that moment where you got curious. Like, I really don't want people to just kind of like move on from that. I think it's that powerful of a, whatever you want to call it, strategy, technique, whatever, development, whatever. Um, where you're sitting in there and you slow down and you just start looking around and you're asking why, and you see something that's not normal and you get curious and you just follow it out, and sometimes it materializes into something and sometimes it doesn't. But that is a technique that if you haven't done that yet and you haven't found consistency yet and you haven't found, maybe you don't have that buck on the wall yet, that technique of getting curious really will start to open up some stuff for you.
Yeah, I agree. And like you said, that slowing down. And one thing I did this year that I think I'm going to do probably from now on is when I was just in Illinois, I wasn't shed hunting. I was trying to learn more. I was trying to learn that property more because I think I learned it a little bit last year, but I wanted to learn it more. And I think we talked about this too. You're trying to do 10 things at one time.
Mm-hmm.
You're trying to look for sheds and you're trying to look for a scrape and you're trying to see what hair is in that bed. Just like you said, slow down, man. Slow down and have a purpose. Our podcast together with me was, intention. Everything you should be intentional and do it with intention. And that includes scouting. And if that means slow down, ask yourself those questions. Why? Do it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so good. Well, I can't thank you enough for coming on here. I really appreciate it.
Appreciate it, man.
And I hope that we can reconnect in the future on some stuff, especially around the fitness stuff, because I know that's a big passion for you. So where can people find you if they want to, hear more about beefcakes, hear more about Angell Road, and hear more about, let me tell you, you've got some awesome, entertaining stuff that you put out that sometimes is associated with deer hunting and sometimes isn't. And all of it is great. So, yeah, where can they find
I try to keep it lighthearted. I'm an adult child. We all are adult children. I'm an adult child. So my brain still says that I'm 15, but my body says you're 43, man. You can find us for Angell Road. You can find us on Instagram at Angell Road Outdoors. Angell has 2 L's. And again, that's paying homage to Ed, who allows us to hunt here in Michigan. You can find Beefcakes, which is my home gym, on Instagram. It's at Beefcakes Gym. It's not for the faint of heart. There's some inappropriate stuff on there, but it's real. That's how my brain works, and I'm not going to apologize for that. That's just how it goes. But yeah, I'd love for people to come interact and share their stories, and just hang out. I love the community that we've found on here and we interact with so frequently. It's been amazing.
Yeah, definitely. Well, thanks again. Appreciate you.
Thank you
being here. And then thank you to everybody else who came out and kicked off their shoes, sat on the mat, and listened to this today. We'll be back next Thursday with another podcast. And we'll see you soon. Well, that is a wrap here on the Mobile Hunters Dojo. We're going to drop a new podcast every Thursday at 5 a.m. Do us a favor. Go give us a follow over at Instagram at the Mobile Hunters Dojo. Also, if you could leave us a 5-star review at Spotify or Apple Podcasts, it helps us out a lot. Thanks a lot. We look forward to seeing you again back here at the Mobile Hunters Dojo.